Am I the a-hole for defending my husband after my ex-husband abandoned our children? I, 38F, have a 9-year-old son, Max, and a 6-year-old daughter, Olivia, with my ex-husband Dan, 35M. Max has severe autism and requires a lot of care. I remarried 3 years ago and my husband Luke is incredible. My ex, Dan, has the kids for 6 hours every week. This week it was on Tuesday, and as I was away for a funeral, Dan took the day off work to be with them in the morning and evening. Dan and his girlfriend, Sophie, picked them up as planned at 11 a.m. My husband took this time to play a round of golf with my brother. They finished the game at 4 p.m. and the golf course is 30 minutes from our house. I got a call at 5 p.m. exactly from Sophie, screaming at me about abandoning my kids. I was confused and eventually realized Luke wasn't home yet. I told her where the spare key was so they could wait for Luke inside. Unfortunately, Luke's car had broken down on the motorway and he was in a complete coverage dead zone. He was able to call emergency services, but nothing else would connect. When the police arrived, the first thing he did was ask if someone could contact Dan to explain what happened. Sophie was already on the phone with the police to report me and my husband for child abandonment. They said one of us should have been there, and my ex didn't feel safe inside our home, so they left the kids inside our home, insisting that the police needed to go save our kids and arrest us. The police officer speaking to them told them multiple times to turn around, stating that they were the ones who had abandoned the children. During this time, I was getting messages from Dan saying how unfair this was to him and Sophie, and that I am a terrible parent for leaving the kids with someone who doesn't give a shit about our kids. At this point, I didn't actually know what was going on. All I knew was that Luke wasn't home, but Dan had found the spare key. At no point did he tell me they had left the kids alone. Luke contacted me through the police, and I arranged for a friend to go there as soon as she could, but the police already had a unit there after the call with Sophie. After this, I've decided to try and get his 6 hours a week removed. I've given him so much leeway over the years, and this was my limit. Our son depends on an adult, and our daughter is 6, and the only thing he would say to defend himself is, well, I kept up my side of the agreement by bringing them back after 6 hours. This has caused a whole other shitstorm, to the point where Sophie sent me messages that the police are now investigating. Dan hinted he is going to try and get the kids taken into care because of my husband abandoning them. Multiple people have asked me why I'm staying with someone who abandoned my children. His parents have threatened to try and gain custody of the children, saying the children need a stable family unit and calling my husband abusive. I said, fuck this, and put the whole story with evidence on my private Facebook page, and people quickly understood. But now, I'm being branded a drama queen and an asshole for publicly blasting the father of my children, putting my husband above my kids. I don't understand how. He's more of a father to them than Dan is. I feel like I've taken crazy pills. Am I the a-hole? Update. That happened a week ago. The post was made a few days after it happened. The post I made on social media had stirred up quite the fuss, but most things have been sorted, for now, and my post is still up telling people what happened. My brother, Pete, was friends with my ex-husband before we ever got together. He also never really got involved in our relationship or separation. He's never been very involved in my life beyond being a good uncle. He's a nice guy, but we have never been that close. He's always been closer to my ex, and now with my husband. When he discovered what occurred, everything changed drastically, and he immersed himself fully in the situation. My brother, who had always been the beta in his friendship with Dan, seemed to be afraid of him. Well, not anymore. He phoned Dan and instructed him to meet at Dan's parents' house, whom he knows quite well. Dan was advised that bringing Sophie to this meeting wouldn't end well for him. I am not sure of the exact conversation, but the result was that Dan's parents are going no contact with him. I don't like them. They have never liked me, but I have never doubted they loved my kids and would protect them with their lives. Pete did tell me that Dan firmly stated he wouldn't end things with Sophie under any circumstances, even if it meant not being able to see his children. Pete explained the situation to my ex-in-laws, confirming that the version of events I posted was accurate, and went through the timeline and proof. Dan argued, bitched, and moaned until his dad told him to leave. I believe that my brother's serious approach, despite being known for caring about beer, women, and sports and nothing else, helped the grandparents realize the gravity of the situation. I spoke with them, and though their apology was hardly worth hearing, we reached an understanding. I will not allow any visits or contact between Dan, Sophie, and my children going forward. Our agreement was informal, no court orders or anything official. If he wants to see them, he will have to fight for it, which I know he won't. Those 6 hours a week are now going to be with his parents, on the condition that if they allow Dan to be around the kids, even once, they will be cut off from our lives. They were fine with this arrangement. Today, they picked the kids up and spent the day with them. After 5 hours, they called and asked if they could bring the kids back an hour later than planned. They were having a lot of fun painting, and the kids wanted to finish what they were doing. No problem. Thanks for checking. I cannot emphasize enough how much I dislike them, but knowing my children are with people who desire to be with them is such a good feeling. Dan didn't even send me a text, asking if he was going to have his scheduled time today. I spoke to a police officer yesterday about the messages sent to me by Sophie. I'm going to gloss over some details, for reasons, but they are moving forward with an investigation. There's a continued pattern of behavior, and it has been escalating. She's made some very specific threats, and over the weekend, sent me a message that contained information she would only know if she had followed me to where I was at the time. Luke has set up external cameras on our house, ensuring our cars are covered by cameras at all times. Our neighbors know what happened last week, so they're going to keep an eye out for her as well. I feel terrible that I allowed this person to be around my kids for almost a year. I let her be around them, without knowing her well enough to recognize she was capable of behavior like this. I spoke to Olivia to ask what she thought of Sophie, and she said she was grumpy and not fun, but nothing to indicate she hurt them or anything. This reaction to the whole situation is just unhinged. Luke has been a star through this. He's resisted the very strong urge to find Dan and beat him with a golf club. He's not worth replacing a driver, and made sure the kids know he loves spending time with them. Olivia calls him daddy anyway, but she knew she was abandoned last week, and he's shown her that he's here for her. He's always loved Max, and been amazing with him, but I know he's found it difficult to connect. He asked for advice, and I told him just to try things he enjoys and see if Max engages. Well, Max spent 5 hours on Sunday with a golf putter in his hand, hitting a ball to the putting machine thing Luke has in the garage, and apparently he's a natural. Luke now has it outside because Max became automatic in the garage and required a bigger green. So, I'm now reassessing my life. Living with one golf enthusiast was barely manageable. 2 might be more than I can handle. I'm currently typing this while looking at Olivia's painting of a birthday cake. Deranged threats aside, I'm content with how things are at the moment. Update. Since my earlier posts, everything has mostly been resolved. I didn't go into detail at the time, but much of what Sophie was sending me involved accusing me of sexual infidelity and telling many people that I was someone who fucked other women's men. I believed she was accusing me of cheating on my ex with my now husband, but we will return to this later. She encouraged people to message me from public posts on her Facebook. One person even came to my door to yell abuse at me. Due to this and other actions she took, I reported her to the police, and they opened a case of harassment. I spoke to a kind officer who collected all the evidence I had, and a week later, she was arrested and interviewed. Her phone and computer were seized, and she was released with conditions to not contact me directly or indirectly. I was informed there was enough evidence to support a prosecution, but at that stage, I just wanted to move on and be done with it. Dragging it through court for who knows how long seemed such a daunting and horrible prospect, so the police didn't proceed with the prosecution and filed it with no further action, meaning the bail conditions would no longer apply once it was filed. I was told this would occur after a review by someone who wasn't the officer handling it, which would be between 1 to 7 days, and I would be notified when it was completed. I'm not 100% sure on the specifics, legalities of this paragraph. It's just how it was explained to me. I wasn't involved in any of it directly. This was communicated to her, and being the bright spark she is, she immediately messaged my brother something along the lines of his sister being a whore and a waste of police time. The bail conditions were still in place. He reported this to the police, not knowing I wasn't moving forward with the whole case. It turns out that where I live, breaching bail conditions is a crime against the government, not the person they were meant to protect. I have no knowledge of what's going on with that, but I am led to believe she is in a bit of legal trouble. After she was interviewed, I was informed of what was said about all this to the police, bringing everything full circle to the original incident that led to all this. Turns out Sophie and my ex were in a relationship for almost 2 years while we were still married, with it ending around the time my 6-year-old daughter was born, and then reconnected in the last year or so. I had no clue this happened. I'm actually weirdly impressed I hid it so well. Sophie was under the impression we split up a year into their relationship, and didn't know we had a son while they were together. When they reconnected, he told her we had 2 kids, which she wasn't happy about, but forgave him. The thing is, my ex told her that my daughter is 8, she is 6. He was covering up lying to her all those years ago about separating from me. I guess this was easier than telling her that not only were we together for the 2nd year of their relationship, but we had a child in that time. I don't know what his long-term plan for this lie was. The day it all exploded, Olivia corrected her about her age, and she realized that I had been having sex with her man while they were together all those years ago. My then husband. She thinks the moment he told her we had split up, she went from being the other woman to the legitimate partner. I'll go to my grave not understanding that logic. Anyway, she hit the roof and refused to be around his love child any longer, which led to the entire issue at my house in the first post. Fortunately, she didn't say any of this in front of Olivia. Dan is still with her. They can have each other. He has made it clear he has no interest in seeing either his legitimate child or his love child, which is acceptable. His parents have been incredible this entire time, helping with childcare to the extent that I have been able to pick up more hours at work. We've gotten along much better since they've accepted that maybe all the bad things they heard about me weren't true. There is still some bad blood, but it's a much improved relationship, which is great for the kids because they love spending time with them both. The absolute worst part of all of this is that Max, Luke, my brother Pete, my ex Phil, and Pete's BL are now in a weird golfing crew. Max still only putts when they reach the hole, but he enjoys watching the others play the full game. Golf isn't played in the winter, is it? This ends soon, right? I'm going to hear conversations about anything else by the end of November, surely. Update. This is an essay that no one asked for or will likely read. I don't care. I'm in a good place. I'm happy. I want to talk about it. Deal with it. Since my last post, child services were involved, and an investigation was done. Legally, parental responsibility is solely mine. My ex didn't put up a fight. My solicitor and the child services people did a lot of the heavy lifting and carried me through it all. They're saints. I don't understand most of that stuff, but they held my hand throughout. Ever since everything erupted, my ex-in-laws have been amazing. If you'd have told me a year ago that I would cherish those two people, I'd have assumed you were on drugs. Or I was on drugs. Drugs would definitely be involved. They're called Joanne and William. It makes it easier to say nice things about them if they have names. I was given an opportunity at work to step into a more senior position, but it required a greater time commitment than was possible, considering Max's needs and the kids attending two different schools. William owns a small business and had been planning on semi-retiring in 2026. He said he couldn't think of a better reason to bring that forward a few years than spending more time with his grandkids. He told me to accept the new role and we can figure everything out afterward, which made me cry like a baby. Since the beginning of December, he has picked them up from their schools 3 times a week and has them until 7 p.m. He does all sorts with them. He took them to the aquarium because Max kept reading a book about fish. One day, Olivia helped him do some things on his car while Max organized his tools. Another day, he built a blanket fort for Livy and a pillow throne for Max and fought the sofa demon. Every day he has them, I'm told about something fun they did together when they get home. It's never been, we just sat around, it was boring, or we watched TV. He finds a way of engaging with them both, in different ways at the same time. I'll be honest, that's something I struggle with a lot of the time. I never got the impression from my ex-husband that he was the greatest dad to him when he was growing up, but he's an unbelievable grandfather. They love their time with him. Christmas was the biggest turning point though. Despite them being so amazing and stepping up with the kids, there was still an underlying bitterness in both directions. They didn't treat me well while I was married to my ex. Nothing abusive, just generally rude and inconsiderate, snippy and judgmental comments. They never made any effort to hide the fact that they didn't like me. I always assumed it was because of some drama at the beginning of mine and my ex's relationship that they couldn't get past. Christmas was spent with my husband, the kids, William and Joanne, my brother, his fiance, stepson, and my current in-laws, Pauline and Mike. We were coordinating our Christmas Day plans, discussing which house we'd be at and when Olivia suddenly said, "Can everyone come to our house? Daddy can cook for everyone." So that became our plan. During the gift exchange, the 4 in-laws handed Luke and me an envelope. Inside were 2 vouchers. The first voucher read, "Honeymoon, redeemable by Mummy and Daddy only," and the second said, "Grandparent Adventure Week, redeemable by grandchildren only." Both were to be used simultaneously. Luke and I hadn't had a chance to go on a honeymoon when we got married, so the 4 of them decided to send us on one. While we're on that trip, they will take my 2 kids and 2 of their cousins of similar ages, 1 from each side, to an adventure family resort not far from us, Center Parcs, for those familiar with the UK. By this point, I had consumed 4 glasses of wine, and with the incredibly generous gift, and William and Joanne calling Luke Daddy, I was an emotional mess. Olivia has always called Luke Daddy, but they always referred to him as Luke when talking to her. It wasn't until I saw the voucher that I realized they had started calling him Daddy to the kids without me even noticing. A few more wines later, I asked Joe why things couldn't have been like this before, why they never liked me. The moment Max was diagnosed, you decided that only you were capable of keeping him safe, and that continued when Olivia came along. Do you know how heartbreaking it is to not be trusted to look after your own grandchildren? That was painful to hear. She wasn't wrong. I'm not saying it absolves them of how they treated me, but I had hurt them, even if it wasn't intentional. I always told myself I trusted them with the kids, but in hindsight, I was simply creating a narrative that allowed me to wrap them both, especially Max, in bubble wrap. I would frequently check up on them. I would pick them up early. I would ensure they got my approval for every activity beforehand. To me, leaving the kids with them at all signified trust, but that was far from the truth. More tears followed, then apologies and hugs. It was extremely cathartic. I really enjoy her company. Now, we've even gone out for lunch, just the 2 of us, a few times recently. The me from 12 months ago would probably want to see the me of today take a drug test for writing that last sentence. Oh, and my brother put his weight on our glass coffee table while getting up off the floor. It shattered, and he needed an ambulance. He was the only sober one, for a change, but couldn't drive since his hands were very red and very wet. Now my daughter knows that shouting "stupid fucking cunting table" at the top of her lungs is not allowed in our house, even if an adult says it first. Our honeymoon to Italy is set for August. Grandparent Adventure Week is scheduled. The 2 granddads are determined to outdo each other by turning every activity into a competition. Hearing 2 60-plus-year-old men argue about who has the better physique for archery was one of the more surreal moments of my life. Before they coordinated this, they hadn't interacted much beyond events involving the kids. Now they've got a group chat and make plans, just the 4 of them. There's talk of a cruise later in the year. Seeing my old in-laws and my new in-laws become friends is really strange, and it will always be strange. I did joke to my husband about how this could lead to them swinging together, and he immediately walked out of the room in silence. For a moment, I'd forgotten that half of that delightful foursome are his parents. Now on to the less fun stuff. My ex-husband Dan and his girlfriend Sophie. Sometime between Christmas and New Year, neighbors called the police to Sophie's home and she was detained. There was ongoing domestic abuse, and that final incident resulted in him being seriously injured. I don't know exactly what wounds he had, only that she messed him up really bad. She has been charged with GBH, editor's note, grievous bodily harm, more than one I think, coercive control, and non-fatal strangulation, and is being held on remand until whenever the trial is. This was all told to me by my brother, who still has mutual acquaintances with him. I never had any inkling this was happening, but then again, why would I? After this, Joe and William informed informed me they were going to reach out to him. They share my viewpoint that the best thing for the children moving forward is for him to not be in their lives, but he's still their son, and they want to be there for him. They didn't need my permission, but I appreciated the heads up. He has relocated to another part of the country, being supported by a charity and making a fresh start. He inquired about the kids, but they told him that he needed to concentrate on himself before he could focus on his children. I received a letter from a solicitor earlier this month asking me to contact them. I asked my solicitor to find out what it was about. It was her solicitors, and they wanted me to consent to child services providing them with any reports involving my ex and my kids. Am I correct in assuming you want me to politely tell them you don't wish to engage with this matter? I'd prefer you be impolite. I am struggling to balance my empathy for the awful situation he was clearly in with my rage for his neglect of our children. I don't know how I will ever reach a point where I trust him to be in the same room with them, let alone alone. Even beyond the incident from my original post, there is just too much history there. I hope he gets the help he needs, and I hope he lives a happy life. I really hope it's far away from my kids. I'm not saying never, but I see any future interaction with them as highly unlikely at best. Yeah, that's all happening to someone I once thought was the love of my life, while I'm the happiest I've ever been. To end on a positive note, the quirky golfing group starts back up in 1.5 weeks. Golf is the worst, I hear you shout. It is never associated with joy. What could possibly make anything related to golf a happy note to end on? When I was 13, I broke my arm riding my bike and couldn't participate in or practice gymnastics for 5 months. My brother thought this was the funniest thing to ever happen to anyone in the world, ever. He asked me every Wednesday why I wasn't at gymnastics training, laughing to himself. My brother still can't play golf because of the injuries to his hands from Christmas Day. Karma's a bitch, Peter. Enjoy carrying my husband's clubs. Clarification comment from OOP on this post. Firstly, I've always had sole custody. He had 6 hours visitation because it was a written agreement stemming from our divorce, but it wasn't court enforced or anything. Child services were aware of it, but at no point did we go to family court over custody's visitation. I thought it was binding, but I was told after about 3 minutes into my first meeting with my solicitor that it wasn't worth the paper it was written on, and he could challenge for a formal arrangement with more access, which I knew he wouldn't do. And then later says she got sole custody of her kids. No, I didn't. What I wrote in my post is actually incorrect though. As I said, I'm not an expert on this. I put that I had been given sole parental responsibility, but that's not accurate according to my husband. There's an order in place preventing my ex from making contact or being able to make decisions about them, but he still has legal parental responsibility. I got confused as that's the nuclear option for all this. Ex didn't contest the change. He didn't respond to any communication about it from my solicitors, his parents, or the courts.